and welcome everyone to the Stanford MBA Maximizing the Classroom and Academic Experience panel. My name is Lisa Gianangeli, and I'm a director of MBA admissions, as well as an alumna of the Stanford MBA program. And I'll be joined today by some of my fellow alumni who will also share their experiences about what it's like both inside and outside the classroom at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, or Stanford GSB. Just to know what to expect for today's session, really, our main focus is to allow you an opportunity to engage with our community and to really learn more about the academic experience at the Stanford GSB. We'll talk a little bit more about the resources that are available to you to build your toolkit. You'll have an opportunity to meet our panelists. I'll start us off with a little bit of Q&A, and then really we want to address your questions. So at any point in today's session, if you have a question, feel free to pop that into the Q&A box, and our panelists will try to address that. If you see a question that someone else has asked that you particularly like, feel free to click on that little thumbs up symbol, which will upvote it, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can in the approximate hour that we have together today. But let's talk a little bit about all the resources that are available to you as you build your toolkit at the GSB. This is truly a transformative educational experience. And one of the things I love about the GSB is that we use whatever pedagogy that really optimizes your learning outcomes. So it's going to vary class by class and even within a class, sometimes week by week. You're going to be exposed to case studies and project-based courses, role plays, simulations. You might actually be rolling up your sleeves and building a prototype in one of your design-oriented courses. You might be participating in an action-based learning program and partnering with different corporations. Or you might be in some courses that are maybe a bit more internal focused, and you're really thinking about your own personal leadership style and getting a lot of really important leadership coaching and mentoring. Your first year is predominantly the core curriculum. We want to make sure that you're grounded on all of those general management disciplines. But even during your core, you'll see some different levels based on your experiences to date and what you've studied and what you've been working in. Towards the end of your first year, you'll start taking some elective courses, and your second year is entirely elective courses. So if you'd like to go deep in a particular area, you absolutely can. But more often than not, we find our students rounding out their skill sets and their knowledge in a few different areas where they have interest. At the business school, there are a few different research centers and learning hubs that you can take advantage of. So for example, our Center for Social Innovation or our Center for Entrepreneurial Studies. But one of the wonderful things I love about Stanford GSB is that you're not just within that business school bubble, but instead you are a part of that entire Stanford University ecosystem, and you have access to all 7 different Stanford University graduate schools. So Stanford is home to some of the top programs in a number of different fields, whether that's law or medicine or education or engineering, the humanities or sciences. There are all these disciplines readily available to you. And we say take advantage of that. Take classes across the street, as we say, and approximately 80% of our MBA students do take classes in other parts of Stanford University. And these days, about 20% of our MBA students are actually pursuing a joint or a dual degree during their time in our MBA program. So maybe they're doing another master's program or a law degree or a medical degree or something else in addition to their MBA. And then throughout your time at Stanford, you're not alone. There's this whole team of folks who are there to support you on your journey. And this ranges from academic and career and student life advisors, leadership fellows, communication coaches, the faculty, obviously, who are here to help you and support you, and a whole host of general health and mental health services that are available to you. But let's hear directly from some of our panelists and some of our alumni, an opportunity to meet them. I'll have each of our panelists, if you wouldn't mind briefly introducing yourselves. We'll go in the order that we see here on the screen. So Diego, if you'd like to start us off.
Welcome. My name is Diego Antaneda. I'm from Lima, Peru. I was at the GSB between 2016 and 18. During that time, I incubated a social enterprise called Latin American Leadership Academy, which I have been running full-time ever since through a pandemic, which has been a lot of fun. So happy to answer questions around the social impact, the social innovation, the entrepreneurship side of the GSB, how the professors, the alumni community have been instrumental in my journey, and more. Great to meet you all.
I think that makes me next. I'm Alana. I was GSB Class of 2020, and I am now talking at you from Houston, Texas, where I'm a consultant for Bain. Before that, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, went to a tiny college called Olin College of Engineering, and by tiny, I mean 80 people a year, truly tiny, and everyone was an engineer. Ran away from engineering, did a master's in England in European literature, and then a Fulbright year also focused on literature and theater in Germany. Followed that up with working as a product manager in tech for Yahoo, and then came to the GSB. And who knows where I'm going next, but I had a great time taking advantage of all the things the GSB had to offer. So looking forward to talking to you about it.
Hi everyone, my name is Jorge. I'm GSB Class of 2020, and I'm originally from Peru, also from Lima, but I grew up in Orange County in Southern California, where I am right now visiting my family. And I currently live full-time in San Francisco, so close by to the GSB. I did my undergrad at Stanford, where I studied computer science and economics for undergrad. Then I did a computer science master's degree also at Stanford. And then actually during my CS master's, I worked on an interdisciplinary class in the School of Engineering with a couple of students from the GSB. And actually that's one of the big factors that motivated me to apply to the GSB program. So I did both of my graduate degrees at Stanford, but not through the dual program because I applied while I was doing the CS master's. But I just really enjoyed the perspective that the GSB students brought in terms of their business knowledge as well as their interpersonal skills. So I wanted to learn the same skills that they seem to have gained at the GSB, and that's what motivated me to apply and have a background in tech. I work as a product manager, and I'm particularly interested in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and blockchain and crypto.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh. I graduated about 3 weeks ago from the Stanford GSB. In undergrad, I was a bioengineering major with plans to become this physician scientist, MD, PhD professor. I quickly realized that maybe that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And so I took a leave from the MD, PhD program at Johns Hopkins to launch my first startup, a kidney disease diagnostics company, as a technical co-founder. But I quickly realized that I actually wanted to be on the business side of things. And so that's why I knew that I had to attend the Stanford GSB so I could learn the business skills and build a network necessary to make those dreams come true. And so now that I've graduated, I am the co-founder and CEO of Glyphic Biotechnologies, which is a biotech startup based here in San Francisco, where I am currently located.
Hi everyone, great to be here. I'm Sebastian Serra. I'm from Mexico City. That's where I am now. I graduated from the GSB in 2017. And I did a dual degree with the Kennedy School at Harvard University, which is the School of kind of Government at Harvard, where I studied a master's in economics and international development. Before that grad school stint, I actually worked for my undergrad institution for Yale, helping to invest the university's endowment in things kind of around natural resources and energy. And now I do that in Mexico and Latin America, doing investments in decarbonization and renewable energy, basically. So happy to talk about what it's like to do a dual degree, especially when you're not in the same location and moving across places, or anything else that you guys want to talk about.
Great. Well, thank you. I'll start us off with a few questions before we go to our audience questions. So again, our audience, if you have anything on your mind, please feel free to go to that Q&A box and type some questions in. But a general question for all of our panelists here, what was one of your favorite classes or academic experiences and why?
My favorite class at the GSB was Reputation Management by Alison Kluger, which is a class where you actually ask your classmates and other people that are important to you in your life, how they view you and what their perception of you is. And was one of the best ways for me to get feedback about how I show up in the world and how I could decide to change or not change different aspects of myself. And so I gained so much from that class. And it was a really good experiential class in which you really went out and sought feedback on how to improve yourself.
This is hard because I have like 5 and I was really hoping that other people would go first and say some of them so that I could say whichever one hadn't been covered. But if I have to pick one, I'm going to pick Dynamics of the Global Wine Industry, which is taught by Alyssa Rapp. It is a great class, so great that I essentially took it twice, once as a student and once as a TA. And it's not just because you taste a lot of really great wine in class, although you do, and that's definitely a benefit. But I also think that that class was actually the best strategy class I took at the GSB. We had a lot of foundation strategy classes, which give you a lot of frameworks, which are useful, but this really applied it all to an industry that is really difficult to navigate, right? Global, highly regulated. It deals with kind of all of the problems you could imagine an industry has to deal with. And learning from people and really brainstorming ways to build successful businesses in spite of that was a really great education for me. Also, Alyssa Rapp is an amazing human being and well worth taking a class with just to get to meet her.
All right, this next one, Sebastian, I'll have you start us off here. We talked about how the Stanford GSB utilizes a variety of teaching methods, ranging from case to role plays, simulations, all sorts of different things here. How do you think that enhanced your learning experience during your time at Stanford?
Sure. No, I think as I was reflecting for the seminar, I was really thinking of the exact point that you're making, Lisa, on the diversity of classes that you take. And so when I think of the types of classes I took a class that's kind of GSB and part of the design school called Design for Extreme Affordability, where we were literally using our hands to build a fertilizer for farmers in Africa. We took a very hardcore finance class that feels, very much as you're in a lecture listening to a hugely successful professor on financial economic theory and probably not understanding 50% of what is happening, but you're in that lecture. And then you also have classes that are really about kind of role playing and putting yourself in a practicing mode on things that now in my career I really value. So I took a class, for example, called Managing Difficult Conversations with Herb Grosbeck, who's probably one of the kind of most famous professors at the GSB. And you're practicing firing people. And so now in my job, I had never fired someone before, and I had to recently fire someone. And I was immediately thinking of the practice I had at least had doing that once at the GSB. And then you also have classes like Startup Garage and these kind of classes where you're literally kind of building your business and have an incredible amount of resources to build that business. So my wife also went to the GSB and she now has a startup that she started in this class, Startup Garage, and was able to spend 6 months during her second year getting credit for building that class. And so in addition to having that diversity of literally every kind of type of education you can imagine, I also think that diversity actually translates to very real life valuable experience post GSB. And that kind of diversity has been, at least for me, really critical in my career post Stanford. So hopefully that answered your question.
Absolutely. This next question I'll point towards Alana, Diego, and Josh. What was your relationship like with faculty? How did you interact with them in or out of the class in different ways? Alana, maybe if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. Well, you take a lot of classes at once at the GSB. So the reality is you're not going to be best friends with every single faculty member. But I did definitely take time outside of class to get to know particular faculty members where I loved their class or where I felt a strong connection with them. And that looked like going to office hours sometimes, but it also just looked like asking them to take some random time with me. And I'd never had anyone say no. And usually they just desperately want to help you. One reason I really love Alyssa Rapp is I showed up to this one-on-one that I had asked her to have with me. And she sat down and she said, okay, what do you want to do during your internship? What do you want to do post GSB? And I said, well, I want to explore working for a performing arts nonprofit. I'm really hoping to get an internship there. And she went, great. Here are 4 leaders of performing arts nonprofits that I have personal connections to. Which ones would you like email introductions to? And that was actually how I got my summer internship at a major ballet company. Absolutely no relation to what she was teaching. I'd expected we were going to talk wine in her class, but what she really just wanted was to be useful to me as a student. And I found that across the professors that I connected with. And I really loved getting to know them better and having them wanting to marshal their resources to help me. That's a hugely valuable asset while you're at the GSB.
Diego, how about your experience interacting with faculty?
Fantastic. So I remember in my interview, I was told that one of the most underutilized assets at the GSB are the professors. And I kind of blew it off as it's like, oh, this is just a marketing stunt. And at the GSB, and then especially post GSB, I'm blown away by the caliber of the professors. They truly are leaders in their industries and amazing people. So some GSB professors have been unofficial and official advisors for Lala, the social enterprise I founded. Some have been donors. I'm not going to tell you whom. Some helped us find our main donors. Some helped us get foundation support in the foundation that they worked at. Yeah, they've been amazing. And also now in hindsight, Lisa, that for example, we're trying to find certain funders or to get to work with some foundations. I'm like, it's so hard to get to Eric Schmidt now. It would have been nicer to take his class, or it would have been nicer to take the class with, say, the CEO of a Meteor Network. Now it's really hard that I'm on the outside. So definitely wonderful professors and great opportunity to get to meet them while you're a student at the GSB outside of class.
And Josh, how about your experiences interacting with faculty?
Yeah, I've had amazing experiences with faculty, both sort of in the classroom setting related to the academics, as well as outside related to my startup and entrepreneurial endeavors. And I served as the TA for multiple faculty. I did an independent study with a faculty member on kidney disease in the US and the healthcare system, where I was able to work with 5 other of my fellow classmates on this independent study project, really dive deep into one area of healthcare that I was really passionate about. And having the support of faculty in this academic project was really valuable in terms of getting access to people who had information that maybe I would not have been able to talk to otherwise. And even for my entrepreneurial endeavors, I have to say that the faculty at the GSB both are just so kind and willing to help, but also so well connected and successful in their own right. And so one of the faculty members is an investor in my company now. One of them I use as a reference check for my investors who were considering investing. And that investor told me that they were so impressed that this faculty member said such good things about me that was one of the reasons that they decided to invest, actually. And another faculty knew one of my potential board members and was able to provide me with deep insight into how this person operated as a board member. And so truly, I think the resources and the value you can get from the faculty relationships, I think runs the entire gamut of all possible things. And so I've had a really great experience getting to know the faculty I've taken the classes with, and even those ones I haven't even taken classes with.
Great. This next question.
Lisa, if there's just one thing I would add, just from more of a social dynamic with professors, at least my housemates and I are second year, people live in houses. And so we did this, but a lot of people did this every Wednesday. We would invite a different professor to come have dinner with us, and they'd spend 3 to 5 hours with us, having dinner, drinking wine, talking about academic things, talking about their lives. And I was just always so blown away by the willingness of people to just kind of do that and engage with you in a more social setting. In addition to the points Alana, Josh, and Diego brought up that more academic, this was just a purely social experience that was wonderful.
Wonderful. I've heard many of those stories too of, some of the top US economic advisors who are faculty or off mountain biking during the weekend with students and things. So I think they're just wonderful connections that are made during your time there. Jorge, this next question, we'll have you start us off here. What are some ways that students can help shape the academic experience, either for themselves or through others?
Yeah, there's so many different ways that you can get involved with shaping the academic experience. One of the big ways that I participated in during my time at Stanford GSB was as a member of the academic committee, which is a part of the GSB student government that focuses on shaping the academic experience, serving as a liaison between the students and the faculty. And that included things like collecting feedback from students about the different classes, especially with a focus on first years, making sure that people feel like they're being supported in their first quarter as they're transitioning into the GSB, to make sure they have the tutoring support that they need for some of the more difficult classes, to make sure that professors are providing the type of curriculum that engages students and resonates with students, both in terms of the material with regards to the companies being discussed, as well as the diversity of the content, focusing on female founders, minority entrepreneurs, that type of thing, to make sure that the content appeals to a broad range of students from all backgrounds. In addition to that, I worked on organizing our quarterly academic small group dinners, which connected small groups of students with a faculty member, and we provided funding for that for students to get reimbursed for either going out to dinner or ordering dinner to eat at the dorms or at their house with different faculty. So this is a great opportunity for students to connect with particular faculty members, whether it's from their existing classes or people who they actually haven't taken the classes of, but they want to learn more about. And this is a great opportunity to build those more personal relations with faculty, because sometimes they'll be willing to share some more personal aspects of their life or their background that you might not get to hear about within the classroom. And for me, actually, some of those dinners helped me learn about professors in a way that, like, I guess when I took their class, maybe I didn't expect I would connect with them on such a personal level, but speaking to them during dinner, I found that we had a lot in common. And then they're professors that I've maintained contact with and I'm close with in the long term. And then another great way to get involved is connecting your experience with the different student groups to your academic experience. And that's something I did. I was one of the co-founders of the Stanford Blockchain Club, which is an undergraduate and graduate interest group for people who are interested in blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And there's a couple of professors who were starting crypto and blockchain classes my year, and they didn't have that much technical or academic experience in the space. But from my computer science engineering degree, I had worked with Dan Bonnet, who's one of the top researchers in the field. So I helped make a lot of the connections, both to academics in the field, as well as to entrepreneurs working in the blockchain space, to get speakers and to figure out case studies for the various classes, as well as to host small group events to connect students to the speakers that came to visit in a more intimate setting after we had these classes with the guests that we invited. And then through my experience as a first generation and low income student, I also founded the first gen low income Stanford GSB Club. And through this club, I helped to advocate for providing more resources and opportunities for students who come from this background, who are the first to go to college from their families, who may need additional financial support because they have a lot of financial stresses from their families back home. And in this way, for example, we advocated for additional tutoring sessions, maybe for students who came from different academic backgrounds, to make sure that they were supported as they started the GSB, as well as additional ways to provide financial support, especially to students who maybe have families or other dependents that they're supporting as well. So basically, like, the GSB provides so many opportunities for you to take the initiative and shape your experience and the experience of your peers in whatever way you want. And I actually just thought of two other really cool ways, but in my GSB experience, I also helped to lead the Stanford AI Salon, which was a speaker series that brings in speakers from the artificial intelligence field. And that was a great way to connect artificial intelligence from a technical standpoint to the social impact that that has across the world, and in terms of economics, social issues. And then also through that, I helped advise the FDA on their policies around regulating artificial intelligence in a medical context. So that was also a cool experience related to academics.
Nice, nice. I want to build off something that Jorge said, kind of in how you were talking about the blockchain course, the AI kind of interactions. We talked about how Stanford GSB is part of that much larger ecosystem at Stanford University. So maybe Alana and Sebastian, if you want to tackle this question, did you take advantage of classes or learning opportunities outside the business school or elsewhere? And tell us a little bit more about that. Alana, do you want to start?
Sure. Yes, I took quite a few across the street classes, which is what we call GSBers taking classes outside of the GSB. One was business related and really to supplement my GSB education, and that was the negotiation class at Stanford Law School. The GSB also has a negotiations class. The law school one is taught in a little bit of different format and style, so I thought it would suit me better, and it was a wonderful class. I was very happy with it. And then I took a bunch of across the street classes just for fun to get a change from the business school curriculum. So I took some pretty obscure like Spanish and Portuguese pastoral literature and like medieval retellings of a particular myth. And it was really just to meet other Stanford people and get my head out of the business space and into something that's always been really fun for me.
Great. And Sebastian, you want to talk about your experiences outside of the business school?
Yeah, sure. So I like Alana, took several classes outside of school. So outside of the business school within Stanford that I won't elaborate on. But I think one of the big experiences for me was combining the MBA curriculum and this other degree at Harvard, focused on economics, et cetera. And so I think that was challenging for sure, because you're moving across the country 3 times. You need to miss out on certain things because there's a quarter when you need to be at the Kennedy School and vice versa. But beyond those kind of logistical issues, I think it really enhanced the academic experience I had. I was able to take a lot of insights and things that I was maybe thinking from a public policy perspective at the Kennedy School, and then bring them back and think about them more from a business school perspective. I had professors who knew each other at both schools, and that really created kind of a unique way to interact with each of them and actually jointly on a few things. So I think that for me, that just really enhanced the experience. And in addition, it was just incredible to see the support that you get from the GSB to be able to do those kind of things. And I think evidence of that is that now 1 in 5, I think is what Lisa said, of students do some sort of dual degree or a joint degree. And so it's become kind of a part of the community that is very normal, very supportive. And for me personally, very enhancing to my education. So I'm really grateful I did it.
Great.
Building on that, I think one of the things that I like the most about the GSB experience is both the flexibility of the academic experience to tailor it to exactly what you need and want out of your experience, as well as the close integration between the GSB and these other schools. With regards to the flexibility, one of the cool things is that basically after your first quarter, you always have some room in your schedule to be able to fit in any classes you want from any other part of Stanford. And the nice thing about it is that you're not restricted by, like, you can only take a certain number of classes. You can basically fit in as many across the street classes as you can fit within like your maximum units that you're allotted for Stanford. So you can essentially take as many classes as you want, as long as you're meeting all of your GSB requirements and as long as you're within the maximum unit allotment. And I definitely took advantage of that. I took classes, even more classes in the computer science department because there's just so many cool classes related to engineering. And I took classes in the law school, which was really cool because I had never done anything related to law before. And that gave me a strong background for the work I was doing advising the FDA. And then also I got to explore some new interests. I took a sailing class. There's like a bay area near Stanford in Redwood City, and they have a sailing club there. So I got to go there a couple of times each week to go and learn how to sail, which was really cool. And then I also took an electronic music production class, which was a really cool way to connect my interest in the arts with my experience in technology. And that was through CARMA, which is the Stanford Center for music and other arts.
Great. I see. Oh, go ahead,
I
Alana.
just wanted to say one quick thing, which is that I know this is an academics panel, but it's not just classes. One of the things that was really fun and I think is underutilized by GSB students is the ability to get involved with student organizations that are Stanford-wide.
Absolutely. I see Nada's had a chance to join us. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself? Welcome.
Yeah, hi everyone. Apologies for joining tremendously late, coming from something else. Class of 16, I came to GSB having worked for 6 years in corporate finance. And then after GSB, spent 4 years in consulting, and now I'm in the venture world in a hybrid role, but mostly a platform role. So working with our LPs and our portfolio companies within the fintech and banking space to connect. And yeah, just really love Stanford, and opened a lot of doors for me, and I was excited to join today. So I'm really sad I missed the first portion, but happy
No
to.
worries. We'll catch you up. Maybe you could share with us one of your favorite classes or academic experiences during your time at Stanford.
Yeah, I'll share my favorite GSB class and then my favorite Stanford class. So my favorite GSB class was high performance leadership. I think it's what it's called. I like to describe it as like touchy-feely too, or applied touchy-feely. I really took a lot from that class that when I was managing people as a consultant, like came to play both with our clients and like coaching them, but also my own team. And then outside the GSB, I took, I forgot the exact name of it, but it was an economics theory class. And it was, I didn't intend to sign up for a PhD class, but I'm really glad I did, because we just talked about things that were so out of the norm of what I would have otherwise had exposure to, that I think opened the door for me to understand certain things in business differently. And I think it was like economic theory of institutions or something like that. And it's great class. So echo the take classes outside your comfort zone across the street.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of this other class I took. I took a quantum computing class without any background in quantum mechanics or physics or anything. And I definitely didn't expect it to be what was essentially like my favorite class ever, but just the way that the class was integrated with technology, physics, math, and even philosophy, like learning about quantum computing helped me think about the world and how people are connected and all of the possibilities that could exist with different universes and everything. And it was a very deep experience, way beyond anything that I had expected before I decided to take it.
Great. Well, I want to build off one of the classes I just heard mentioned a minute ago. We affectionately refer to it as touchy-feely, but its real name is interpersonal dynamics. And I noticed in the Q&A section, folks were asking about classes like interpersonal dynamics or other great soft skills courses. So does anyone want to quickly describe what interpersonal dynamics is? And then also maybe mention some of your other favorite soft skills courses like high performance leadership, which we heard as well.
I can take that since I brought it up. I presume it's still the same since a few years ago, but essentially, I would say there's really two overarching things you get out of the class with a lot of nuance sub-points you can get out of it. So the first major thing is, how do people experience you? Like, how do you show up to people? And then the second is like, what assumptions do you make about people as you're interacting with them that may influence your behavior for good, bad, indifferent? And the way the class is structured is you're in a group of about 12, and there's a plenary component each week, and then you spend 4 or 5 hours in a room with your 12 people with a very loose agenda, and it's awkward, and then stuff happens, and then you all learn and to be really honest with each other. And there's 2 facilitators, and so For someone who's hyper structured, you're just like, you want me to do what? And then eventually you kind of just see that the group naturally starts to create learning for each other. And then at the end of the class, there's a weekend or a couple days where you do really just that, but like for 8 or 12 hours at a time. And then you do a lot of reflection and a lot of writing. And I think it's a really great course if that's a focus of yours. And then one other class that I would add in the soft skills area is it was a communications class. I don't remember the name of it, but really you're just learning how to communicate, and you have to do a lot of presentation, a lot of different exercises. And I think it sounds like it should be straightforward, but you actually take a lot out of it if communication is something you want to work on. And I believe the instructor, I can't remember her name, but is someone who's very well known in the communication coaching world, has been working with Stanford students for a long, long time. And I just found her, what she'd pick up about the nuances of your, not just your verbal, your oral communication, but your nonverbal communication to be really helpful. So.
Great. Well, we have a great question from an audience member here of how would you describe the learning culture and environment at the GSB? Who wants to describe the learning culture and environment?
I can go. I think one of the things that really appeals to me about the GSB is just the collaborative culture. I think like it's not cutthroat at all. It's not like me against you, like vying for like professors' time or for resources. It's like me and you working together to uplift both of us, like uplift everyone. Like, what can I do to help you to like improve your experience? I think it's all about like growing and learning together as an entire class, as an entire GSB community. And that's one of the things that I love the most. Like I've always felt really supported in terms of like emotional support, community support. It just feels like a family in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would just add to that point that Jorge made, and people who have graduated more recently, I don't know if this has changed, but there's a grade non-disclosure policy, which invites what Jorge said in a very obvious way, right? No one is kind of competing when going to a potential employer or whatever to say, oh, I got this grade or that grade. And so that creates a very kind of collaborative culture, as Jorge was saying. The only other thing I would say about, I think, a culture that as I reflect on kind of both my experiences, both at Harvard and at Stanford, I think the goal that Stanford has of having all these kind of soft skill classes, like interpersonal dynamics that Nadu was describing, create a dynamic where people are constantly asking each other for feedback, constantly role-playing things, and really trying to just improve themselves as human beings that I have never seen in another environment. And so that actually becomes a really cool culture where it's encouraged to reflect, to give each other feedback, to be honest with each other, that I think was really unique, at least in what I've seen. So I really enjoy that as well.
We have another question here of, could you elaborate on the extent of teamwork and leadership opportunities within the classes you took?
I can go for that. So there's actually so many classes, as people have already mentioned, like Startup Garage. There's also across the street classes that bring in students from all the different Stanford schools to work together. So you could work hands-on on various different projects. Like I took an entrepreneurship class in which we were designing a business, and I was working with people across GSB, law school, engineering school, and we essentially like came up with a business plan, came up with the financial statements, created a presentation for a pitch that we did to actual venture capitalists from Sand Hill Road, who gave us feedback on our pitch. And in each of these experiences, the cool thing is that there's many opportunities for you to take the lead and figure out the dynamic with the team that you're working on. So maybe in some cases, you'll actually want to be the one that takes the lead on something, and you'll gain like leading experience there, but also in some cases, actually what's better for the team as a whole is for you to take a step back and to be a follower or to be a supporting team member rather than the leader in that particular instance. So I think that's one of the really cool learning experiences, is that you learn that leadership doesn't just mean being the one at the top who is managing everything and telling people what to do. Leadership means doing whatever is necessary to make sure that your team is successful. And that can mean working in a large variety of roles, which sometimes aren't the one that's out in the front having that very visible role. And it can mean being a supporter or someone who is providing a foundation for the other team members to do their best work. And you're able to learn about those dynamics and see how you can fit in most effectively in different situations through the project-based classes.
Here's a question that was directed towards Sebastian, but I think anyone is also welcome to chime in here. Which classes and/or experiential learning experiences were the most useful for you to really become a leader in your career?
I think a couple come to mind. One is touchy-feely, interpersonal dynamics, because I think that gives you a lot of feedback, as Nadu was saying, on how you come across, no? And what is the impact that certain things that you hadn't even thought of are having on others. And so it's a very unique setting in that front. And that's helped me at least measure more carefully how I have certain interactions from a professional standpoint. The other one is the one I alluded to earlier, the managing difficult conversations, which was one where you're basically role-playing difficult conversations, firing someone, having a big discussion with a partner about how you should split equity, those kind of things that are at a theoretical level very easy to do. But once you're actually doing a role-playing exercise, it at least gives you one rep to have done that before you're actually doing it live. And so I think those two, for me at least, have been very valuable in my career.
Something I'd add that struck me from my time at the GSB is that, I mean, sometimes you hear this idea of like, did you really have to go to the GSB to learn about marketing? Could you have bought that book? Same for finance, same for accounting, same for a lot of things. One thing that I really valued was that you have this combination of industry leaders and world-class researchers who have curated all of these resources. And what I found very impactful was how consistent the narrative, the values, the worldviews, the mindsets were. And Lisa, I don't know if this is intentional or no, but pretty much everywhere at the GSB, I heard this idea of like, hey, to be a better leader, you should listen. To be a better leader, you should really care for the other person. You should be kind. You should live by your values. You should this, you should that. I think there's only one class that offers kind of like the dark side narrative, which is Path to Power. I didn't take it, but my understanding is that this professor's narrative is, yeah, all of that is beautiful, but you should not ignore how power works in the world. So this class is focused on power, but everything else was this very consistent story. Like even like how to fire people, negotiations, and so on. Everything was very consistent around like, hey, just be a good person, just bring your best. And actually, there's hard evidence that supports that this will help you be a better leader, better negotiator, better salesperson, better boss, and so on. And that helped me just cut through all the noise of so many gurus and books out in the world. And I was like, okay, amazing. I can be myself. I can try to be a good person. And I can also be a better leader, better entrepreneur in doing so. And I have a consistent theoretical base and evidence base behind this. And I found that super helpful.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot on empathetic leadership for sure that I've heard. Yeah. Here's another question from the audience of how did you balance your academic schedule with all the other opportunities available at the GSB? And what does the typical week in the life of a student look like? I see Alana smiling. Do you want to take that one?
I'm laughing because, I went into consulting, which is famously a long hours profession, but I definitely have more free time now than I did at the GSB, just because I scheduled everything so tightly at the GSB, right? It wasn't that I was doing academics for 60 hours a week, but I was doing something from 8 a.m. to midnight every day. And it's just a calendar management game. You quickly decide how much effort you want to put into academics, and people vary a ton on that, right? You want to put in absolutely enough to get value out of your classes, but you can push very far past that, or you can do the bare minimum to be learning something. And so that determines how many hours you need to devote to academics. And the rest of it will fill up with everything from coffee chats with people to club events to foam, which is our Tuesday night parties. And as long as you keep a good calendar, it's incredible how much you can fit into a week.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, the framework that I often give people is first start with like, what are you doing all of this for? Like if you have to pick 3 to 5 priorities that you're going to use for as a decision rubric for how you spend your time, what are you doing all of this for? And having clarity on that, I think makes everything else much easier, because then you can say, okay, this quarter, this month, this week, this day, I have 20 options. Which of those serve that purpose? And then how am I going to mix them together to make this all work? And the reality is, like, if you don't use calendars, you're going to have a rough 2 years. And I think that, you know, you have to decide, like, where do you need to double down and spend time? I took classes where I learned a lot, but I didn't necessarily spend a lot of hours, either because of my background or because the content was structured such that I didn't have to do a lot of stuff outside class based on the course itself. And so you can kind of mix and match those, right? Like it may not be a good idea in the quarter that you're trying to plan a conference and also recruit to take a bunch of classes that require you to do, you know, 4 hours of case reading and writing before each class. So you kind of just figure that out for yourself. And the last thing I would say is think about kind of how things build on each other as you're determining your courses and other experiences. So for example, I wanted to take certain classes before I went and did my internship abroad, because I wanted to take some of those perspectives and go see what it looked like when I was like on the ground. And so those are some subtle things I would also just add to think about.
Great. I see a question here touching again upon grade non-disclosure, which was brought up briefly beforehand, and how it aids to that collaborative culture and learning environment at Stanford. But this question is also a really good one in that it talks about how does that actually push you to take some academic risks and to try some classes that might be really hard and outside of your comfort zone. Can any of you share an example where maybe you took a class that was a little bit scary or intimidating or outside your comfort zone?
I was really scared to take financial trading strategies, which ended up being one of my favorite classes, because it's a class where you spend a bunch of your time in class and a large portion of your grade is determined by how you do in these market simulations where you are trading stocks or options or whatever the topic of that class period is in real time in a sort of compressed simulation of the market. And I came to the GSB from zero finance background. I had really only taken my required first year of GSB finance courses before this. So it was kind of a leap of faith to take that class, but it ended up being one of the coolest classes I took, because it really taught me how the market actually works and what options really are and what they mean and how people trade them beyond the academic side of it that I had learned in my foundation finance class.
I think I have a similar story to Alana, where I also had no finance background coming into the GSB. In fact, at one of these admit receptions, I met a fellow classmate who told me they were in PE, and I asked her if she was in physical education because I had no idea that private equity was a job. And I ended up taking like over 7 different finance classes at the GSB. Most of them I took pass fail in the end. So corporate financial modeling, the financial restructuring debt class. These are all things I had absolutely zero background in. And I think because of great non-disclosure and generous pass-fail policies at the GSB, I was able to take these classes that I was interested in, knowing that I had no background in them, but wanted to learn more about it, and was able to, I think, now having graduated, have a decent amount of finance knowledge relative to before. So.
Great. This next question, maybe Diego, I'll have you kick us off here. But what advice would you have for incoming MBA students who are really trying to maximize their academic experience and their classroom experience at the GSB? What advice would you give people?
I'll take the focus advice. If someone else has the go explore advice, go for it. But I came in laser focused, right? Like my essay was about Lala. It talked about, like, by name, this is the thing I want to build. So that helped me cut through a lot of that noise of just, there's so many opportunities that you could take. It helped me say no to a lot of things, really focus on like what classes to take. Every single project in every single class somehow was geared towards this organization. A lot of classmates used me and Lala to dip their toes into social entrepreneurship, into Startup Garage, and so on. So that was beautiful. And many of the relationships that I ended up building with professors, with staff from the Center for Social Innovation, with classmates have all been hugely valuable. Yeah.
Any others want to share advice on how to maximize your academic experience?
I think you should, I came in with not one thing, but like 3 things that I was really gearing my academics around. One was developing economies. The other was interpersonal development / leadership. And then the third one was like strategy. And so I think for me, as I thought about what classes to take, they had to revolve around that. And you'll notice I didn't say entrepreneurship anywhere in there, which confuses people because I managed to get out of the GSB taking only one entrepreneurship class, managing growing enterprises. And I think that like a healthy amount of curiosity is important, but that looks different for everyone. And my biggest piece of advice is like, don't try to replicate what alums did and don't try to replicate what your classmates are doing, because even if you do exactly what they did, you'll come out with a completely different experience anyway. So you might as well live your own experience. And I think that just takes some courage to be like, you know, this is what I think I want to do, and whatever that looks like, just go with it. And the luxury is like every quarter you can kind of change your mind, but you only get 6 of them. So, you know, make use of them. And so that's how I would think about it.
Great advice. Well, I want to be cognizant of our time. So I want to thank all of our panelists today for sharing your perspectives. I also hope that this is just the start of our attendees' MBA journey. And one way to continue that is through mystanford.mba. If you haven't already been to this site, definitely check it out. You can create your own personalized dashboard. That'll tee up classes or clubs that might be of interest to you, student or alumni profiles that you might relate to. If you start an application, you can also track your progress through that and learn about other great events like today's. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and best of luck on your MBA journey. Thank you.